I'm from California, Local 948 in Fresno. I am the president of the local, but I want to go back to earlier time in my history. As a young person growing up, when I first started elementary school, my name is Rogelio, which is Rojelio, but when I went to school, there was no teachers there that spoke Spanish, so they gave me Roy as my name. So from that point on, Roy stuck with me up until this day. But I want you to reflect back on that, because at that point in time, in any of the jobs in California, there were no minorities in those jobs. So every time somebody called my name, they had a hard time trying to pronounce it. And I'll go even one step further, that every time I went from one grade to another grade, they would start calling off all the names. And when they got to the Art Garcias, and I know that there was a pause, they would always, I knew my name was coming up next because they couldn't pronounce it. So every year I had to say, okay, I go by Roy. So that's one thing that I've done throughout my whole life. But as time went on, I had to do it less and less. But I'm going to take you to the time where I started working in the fields. I started working in the fields when I was 11 to support the family. I started working there, and it was probably the worst conditions that I've ever worked on. You got up early before the sun came up, and you worked until the sun went down, and you always stayed out in the fields. No toilets back then, and so it was very difficult. But I have to say that I'm really proud of the fact that I worked out in the fields, because working in the fields taught me how to work hard. And so later on in life, I would say this is what helped me be successful in my career, because I always knew that if you worked hard, it would pay off. So I started working in the fields when I was 11, and then when I was 16, some of the field workers wanted a raise, and this was my first taste at organizing, because they wanted a raise, but nobody spoke English, so they asked me to be their spokesperson. I went to the boss and said, hey, we'd like to get a raise, and he asked, who wants a raise? I said, all the workers want a raise, and so he had a meeting with everybody, and he asked everybody in front of me, okay, I know you want a raise, who else wants a raise? And at that time, even though everybody said they would support me, nobody raised their hands because they were afraid of their boss. They were afraid of their boss because most of these gentlemen that were working alongside of me had families, and they were afraid of getting fired. And so subsequently, nobody got a raise because I didn't have the support. But I understood why they decided not to raise their hands. But that was my first taste at organizing. That was my first taste at becoming union. I left the fields at the age of 19, and I got a union job at a manufacturing plant. I worked there for a few years. I decided to become a steward. I was a steward there for 5 years, and I went and applied for a union job at another place, and I worked there for a couple of years before I went to work for AT&T, which is also union. And I would say that I tell everybody that the hardest work I've ever done was working in the fields, and every job that I had afterwards was easier than the one before. And so I would like to say that I believe in the union. I've been a believer in the union since I was 16. I'm 59 now, and I've been a union member in one union or another for 39 years, and I will support the union until the day I die. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about how did you become a shop steward?
I became a shop steward because at the second job the second job, which is my first union job, I became a shop steward because the union was new there. There was a reason why the members there voted union, because of the horrible conditions. And becoming union is only the first step. It requires that the members get involved, but it also requires that somebody leads those members. Those members have to have somebody lead them. And when I became a steward, it was because I felt like somebody needed to step up and do something, and I became a steward to try and make a difference. And I would say that the conditions improved after we all got involved. They started offering more benefits, ESOP plan to allow us to get some stock in the company, but that's what prompted me to get involved in the union job at my first union job is because of the horrible working conditions. And the reason why I got involved in AT&T was also a similar reason. I got involved in 1998 where we had a supervisor that came in and he was suspending people left and right. Every week somebody got suspended and everybody was running scared. And I said, you know, I'm at a good time in my life where I can get involved. And so I got involved, and within 30 days they replaced the first level supervisor, they replaced the second level supervisor, and they replaced the third level. And that's all because we were threatening to do a wildcat strike, and rather than face a wildcat strike, they decided to replace the management at that point in time.